The redemptive power of reinvention. Gotta love that quote. We'll tell you why it means so much to Ashely Bell. He is the CEO of Redemption Holding Company. It's a holding company that is in line to purchase a bank in Utah. Very interesting strategy. We'll talk about it right now at the Nasdaq. Hello everyone, it's Jabari Young here at the Nasdaq, and I am joined by Ashely Bell. He is the CEO of Redemption Holding Company, a holding company formed to purchase Holladay Bank and Trust in Utah. He's also the CEO of Ready Life's fintech company, National Bank, Black Bank Foundation, right? You're running that too. It's a lot on your plate, man.
It's a lot going on.
Yeah, man. Ashely, how is everything, man? How you?
Everything's amazing, brother. Just appreciate you taking time to elevate these sorts of stories, and thank you for what you're doing.
Yeah, well, listen, man, we appreciate the time, so thank you for coming. I always start these conversations because we're at the stock market. You got to give me a stock, right? What is something that's worked for you, or that you're looking to buy, something that maybe is off the radar?
Yeah, you know, first off, when I look at stocks, first I realize that I have a lot going on, so I make sure I hire the right people that are investing in the right stocks for me. I spend a lot of my time trying to do in private deals that are about to IPO.
Yeah.
So my story is like before they get here is where I want to be. I want to get in right before the IPO, and there's a lot of great things right now, especially in the life science sector, that I think are poised to make big hits next year. So I'm telling everybody, look in life sciences before they go to market. There's lots of capital out there looking for life science. I think IPOs are going to be really strong.
Life sciences, I love that, man. Listen, we are in October as we talk, right? So, you know, Halloween's coming up. What's your favorite scary movie of all time?
Oh, favorite scary movie? You know, I got to go back when I was a kid. Like, what scared me as a kid? Arachnophobia, brother.
Arachnophobia?
Like, those spiders were crazy, man. They were like the size of trucks.
Eating
everybody up. So I didn't like that.
I remember the preview and the clips, man, but I'm like, nah, this is too much. I thought you would go Michael Myers or Chucky or something like that. But
truck-sized spiders.
Those spiders, man. Are you going to dress up as a spider? Is that possible?
No, you know, I like to keep it classy on Halloween. I try to go for celebrities and characters in my favorite movies type of trip.
Absolutely. Well, listen, let's dive into a little bit of news, right? Ready Life, the fintech company that you are running. You guys have a new pilot program in Cleveland, right? And Ready Life is a fintech company, and you're looking to eliminate credit scores and use cash flow to underwrite a lot of these loans. So take me into this pilot program, which you're going to help, you know, low and moderate income borrowers to try to be homeowners, right?
Yeah, I mean, we think there's untapped value. The market hasn't really seen a way to really de-risk mortgages for people that don't have great credit scores. And inherently, when you look at credit scores, the numbers say that people of color are outside the normal boxes that banks use. 54% of African Americans are thought to not have a high enough credit score to even get a mortgage. It's a really sad situation to live in a country where the majority of one race of people don't qualify to own the roof over their head. So we know that that's not true, that there's people of all shapes and sizes and colors that are paying rent every month, that many times is more per square foot than the people that are owning the homes in the same neighborhood. So for us, you just got to get away from using traditional credit scores or augment them with cash flow based sort of understanding of how people live, how do they spend their money. Let's separate how someone spends money on their needs versus their wants. It's one thing to take a vacation and run your credit cards up for the summertime because you want your kids to go on a good vacation, you want to take an anniversary trip, and that credit utilization can tank your credit score. Which means for the next 3 to 6 months, you can't buy a home or get a good interest rate. But the whole time, you paid your rent, you took care of your car, you took care of all the things that you know you need to take care of. We want to create a system where those things matter and you can separate the two. Because Ready Life, what we're doing is we're building mortgage payments around rent payments. So if you can pay $3,000 a month for rent, then of course you can pay $2,800 a month for a mortgage. It's the same thing, but you own it and you'll take care of it, and it'll be a bigger priority because you're building equity with every payment instead of handing that money to someone else. So that's what we're doing in Cleveland. We have a program where we're solving for both sides, Jabari, which is like, how do you get someone access to credit, which means we're going to be a hard money lender. We can determine our own rates. We can hard money lend them the money to own a home. But at the same time, we're partnering with land banks throughout the Midwest. A land bank is a quasi-governmental agency where most of the time they take state forfeitures. Meaning a house in a neighborhood, for whatever reason, the government takes it because eminent domain could have had drugs or crime there. And there's these whole repositories of houses. And so we partner with local governments to say, we'll take this home, we'll put our own money in it to rehab it, to get it right. But what I'll also do is sell it below market value.
All right.
Meaning that if it costs me $200,000, $250,000 to fix it, then I'm going to sell it for no more than 10% over what it cost me to actually fix it. So that's affordable housing.
All right. Is there a risk though? Because when I first see no credit checks, I'm starting to think of the era of the no doc, no credit loans, which may have helped the financial crisis or led to that, where a whole bunch of people were buying houses and they probably couldn't afford it and they probably shouldn't have been accepted anyway because of no credit scores, right? Is there a risk in that, or does the cash flow, does that tell you something else?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great point. We never want to put someone in a house just to have a house.
All right.
The goal is to create generational wealth. So none of this works. Our goal, and understand my business partner is Dr. Bernice King, the youngest daughter of Martin Luther King Jr. When we set out on this journey, it was to create generational wealth for people, because we understand in our country racial and economic injustice are inseparable twins. Those are my words. Those are her father's words. You can't have a conversation in America about race or let's talk about economics as well. So for us, you de-risk it by just using common sense. When you go into someone's bank account, you can tell what they spend their money on, and you get it real time. I would argue that our data is better than credit scores, because the credit scores are updated much less frequently than what we're doing.
Yeah.
And we're separating needs versus wants. Humans function differently when we spend things on what we have to spend them on versus what we want to spend our money on. And so our data is better, it'll be more accurate, and fundamentally, we're never gonna let someone get a mortgage payment that is more than their rent payment. But also, by using hard money loans, we can reimagine what mortgages look like. Let's look overseas at the UK, for example. Look at what the UK is doing to get younger homeowners into homes. They're reimagining the timeline. So instead of a 30-year fix, you got 40-year fixed. You got 45-year fixed.
Yeah.
Now, what does that do? That means that over the lifetime of a loan, you would pay more if you had a 40-year fix. But who has never refinanced their mortgage though, from beginning to end? That's not practical, right? But by doing a 40-year fixed mortgage or 45, you lower that monthly payment. Now you're in strike zone because you automatically have, you can get closer to what they're paying in rent most times. But again, remember, these mortgages are also eligible to be sold in the secondary market. For me, because a couple of things. Sometimes they're going to be CRA eligible, which is Community Reinvestment Act.
Yep.
But also, many times, like I said, because I'm charging people less than market value, that also allows us for them to have equity day one, which means the loan value versus how much they owe is totally within range. So you got 60% equity day one. That de-risk it for the banks. If you want to know what's de-risking, see the loans you were talking about, the no docs, those people had zero equity. It was doomed from the beginning because they were only paying interest. Principal never went down. But if you walk into a loan and you got 60% of it, or 60 to 40% equity, then the banks de-risk.
All right.
Because even if it did go wrong, they have a lot of equity to fall back on. And for that family, think about them. If something were to go wrong with them, healthcare crisis, emergency, they immediately have a safety net.
All right.
But they also have the financial literacy from mom to pop to daughter to son to know how to manage that new access to capital so they can take those high loan credit cards, those high interest rate credit cards, and refinance them into a package that can be attached to a second lien on their house, but get those interest rates down.
Yeah. Why Cleveland? Why that city? I mean,
yeah,
phenomenal place, right? Been there through a whole bunch of times, but I look at it, a whole bunch of other cities. I'm from Philly. They could probably use the help. Places in Texas. You're in LA, Atlanta area. Like, why Cleveland?
Well, when you look at the Midwest as a whole, you've seen a lot of population drain. So Cleveland's where we're starting. The Midwest as a region is amazing for this particular reason. A lot of the industry that was there has moved to the South.
Yeah.
They moved to other places. And so you've had population drain. You have a lot of dilapidated homes. But the cost of living is really affordable. And so when you look at these numbers, you're talking about an average home is 2,000 square foot. It's like 250,000. I can't get that in LA, can't get that in Atlanta either. But in Cleveland, you can actually create affordable housing for the people that live there and the people who are working remotely around the country who are like, well, you know what? I can move to Cleveland and get a house here and bring my remote job where I'm making $150,000 and now I'm doing great and I'm adding to the Cleveland community. So I think in both ways it works good. But also there was a guy named Gus Frango who is the leader of the Cuyahoga County Land Bank, who really saw this as an opportunity to really go after people who are working and working hard and having a hard time to get ahead. And Gus Frango was the president of the Cuyahoga County Land Bank, who started this, and we named the program after Gus. Unfortunately, Gus passed right after we started the program, and so we call it the Gus Golden Door Initiative because of him.
Yeah. Well, listen, man, take me inside of Ready Life right fast, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's raised over $3 million, right? Is there any update there? You guys raised any more money since?
Oh yeah. We're way past $3 million.
Way million.
Yeah.
How much?
So we just secured another $50 million just for this program.
Okay.
So this is going to churn out our ability to create mortgages and then put them on a secondary market. So with the $50 million of secured line that we have now, we're able to continue this process of getting people in homes, seasoning those loans, and then putting them in the secondary market.
Was it a Series A, Series B?
Oh, that's the line of credit. The Series A for us, we were over $10 million.
You're over $10 million.
Just for the tech piece, because the tech piece is this, because what you're hearing is, the reason I'm able to do this, because I'm not a developer. I'm not a developer just coming here to develop an offset. Like, Ready, when it raised $10 million, was to get the tech together. The tech is replacing the credit scoring system. The tech is being able to have alternatives by which people can have their risk assessed, and we'll start with mortgages, but we think it can sort of recalibrate the entire system.
Yeah, well, I mean, that gets into the redemption side, and I get to that in a minute, but so just to be clear, all together, I'm seeing over 60 million raised for Ready Life?
10 million for Ready.
10 million for Ready.
A, and then we're doing mortgages, so
right.
you're not going to spend company money on mortgages.
Right.
You got warehouse lines. That's how people do most companies.
Yeah.
Who you're talking to, big warehouse lines that crank this stuff out.
Yeah.
We're able to secure 50 million for that.
How many employees at Ready Life?
30.
30 right now, and based in LA and Atlanta.
We are. We're that remote folks that we're talking about. I got folks trying to get a house in Cleveland now, but this is for everybody else.
Yeah. Now listen, man, and again, we take the platform you're trying to build with Ready Life, and then you have Redemption Holding Company, which again is trying to purchase the bank in Utah. And I was listening to a podcast you did, and you were kind of talking like, hey, one day we got to talk about combining the bank along with the tech, right? And having that infrastructure, because when you look across America, black banks, as legit as they are, the only issue they're having is fintech, right? I mean, there's a whole bunch of banks I would love to do business with, but I'm like, man, you have no mobile platform that I can rely on. And so is that the end goal there?
It's funny. It's like the old adage of rappers and athletes.
Yeah.
Rappers want to be athletes want to be rappers. Banks want to be fintechs want to be banks. They love each other, they idolize each other, but they're two different worlds, right? Two different skill sets.
Yeah.
And so you're in an era now where fintechs were moving the needle very quickly with financial technology and doing things that banks were just too slow to do. But I think that era is coming to an end. I think that the regulatory posture now is that banks are being held more accountable for the fintechs they partner with. And you're going to see banks start acquiring more fintechs or having to do it themselves. All sorts of reasons. KYC is one, know your customer. That was kind of just out there for a while.
Yeah.
I think the regulators are bringing it back in. So, but to your point, the redemption in that context, we have to think through not only just having another African-American controlled bank in our country, but what is a type of bank that we don't have? So when you talk about fintechs, you and I both can name black-owned fintechs that were created post-George Floyd that were out here to try to bridge the wealth gap and do all these great things. They were banking as a service, meaning that you could get your debit card from them. They would create an online account, and you felt like you were banking with the black fintech. But the problem was there's not one African-American-owned bank that platform could sit on top of.
Right.
So what you were actually doing was accelerating the wealth gap sometimes. Because if I go in Atlanta and get my haircut, and I use an app that is not sitting on top of a black-owned bank that I do bank at, I just sucked my money out of the black bank, gave it to somebody else, and sent it right out of Atlanta, right? So we have to be able to think through how do we create financial infrastructure in the community so that these companies can't pump marketing dollars further into the community, extract the money, and then leave us with what?
Yeah, nothing. All right. Are you talking of maybe having Ready Life sit on top of every last black bank in America as a fintech? Like, is that maybe the goal?
Well, look, I do believe that what Ready Life will be able to do is be a leader in trying to rethink risk when it comes to cash flow. Banks are banks, brother. And so at the end of the day, I think redemption needs to be a part of the larger conversation about what the future of banking looks like. Because to your point, what you just said is the key to whether or not black banks exist in the next 20 years. 64% of African Americans, they've said, would switch a bank with the bank they're banking with now to a black-owned bank if the technology was what they wanted. That technological gap must be bridged because a lot of our black banks now are holding on because of our parents, the churches that we attend, the businesses in these communities who love them. But the reality is, for them to succeed, the technology gap has to be bridged. And so you have to think through, what should the next generation of African American owned banks look like? And I challenge, any entrepreneur, if you want to make money in this industry or any other industry, whether you're black, white, or otherwise, you have to be able to get customers from everywhere of all backgrounds. The black bank should not just serve black people. It should be competitive and should be able to support any customer in any place in America, just like every other bank.
Yeah. Well, listen, man, you talk about the next generation of banks, right? Let's flash back, right? You grew up in Gainesville, Georgia, right? Your mom was a school teacher. Your dad fought in Vietnam, worked at Johnson & Johnson.
Yeah.
What's the biggest thing you learned from your parents?
I think from my mom, it was empathy for people. My mother helped integrate schools.
Yeah.
One of the first black teachers in a system that didn't have any. And not only was she a place of familiarity and safety for black kids that came into the system, but she also was a peer to white teachers to help them understand the homes that they come from, the places that they come from. And I think at the surface, that era was tumultuous, but they were the teachers who really were the unspoken heroes of integration in our country. The people that had to touch those kids every day and get them from being yelled at outside of buildings to integrating into a world that was different for them. She's a part of that legacy. Yeah. My father on that side was Johnson & Johnson, left and took they left the industrial engineering piece after NAFTA and went overseas. Like a lot of people did. They started producing overseas. So my dad lost his job. Yeah. But what he did do is he decided that he would reinvent himself and would do what he was good at, which is being a man and a leader of young men, which is like me and my brother. And he became a warden at jail. Yeah. I know a lot of those kids. Yeah, and so at the end of the day, my lesson was, you don't look at people for what you see in front of you. You don't look at them just by resume, to LinkedIn profiles. People are complex, they have depth, they all have value. Yeah. And that's what you're seeing with Ready Life, is I'm looking beyond the credit score. We're digging deeper. We're getting more information so we can see your whole value. People are more than a credit score. They're people, they're humans. And I think that's what I took from my parents, that I will always see more in people than what the labels people put next to them.
Banking is in your blood though, right? Your mom had some, side of the family had banks that they owned in the South and they lost it. But did you always want to be a banker when you were young, running around watching cartoons or scared of the spiders? Did you always want to be a banker then?
No, I always, I saw my mother and my father live impactful lives. Yeah. So I knew that I would want to have impact. I was a partner at one of the largest law firms in the world. Yep. And I left that to a very nice, safe thing to do. Every lawyer, when you go to law school, you want to get to partner at the big firm, done that. But my job is to have impact. My life is to have impact. My purpose is to figure out, how do I leave this place better than what I was when I got here? And on top of that, I think that history is going to look back on what we did as a people, not as a black people, but as a human race after George Floyd and after many other instances around the world. And they'll study, our kids will study what we did or didn't do, what we said versus what we actually did. And I want the story to be told that good people of goodwill figured out a way to not just create great sound bites about what the problems are and what the solutions could be, but somebody got their hands dirty. Somebody tried to go along a path that wasn't paved and took risk. And they found people who were willing to take risk as well to make this world a little bit better. And if we all do that in whatever industry we're in, then let history judge us kindly as the people who at least understood that we couldn't go back to the way we were. Yeah. And that is what I hope the inspiration my parents gave me and others around this country give me every day that I bring to the marketplace.
And in college, you major in political science and then law, end up at Denton's, as you said. What's the biggest thing you learned working there at the law firm?
Well, I gotta be honest, some of my biggest clients were the ones that told me, Ashely, you're smart, you solve our problems every day. You need to be on the other side of the table. You should go start a business, take that passion you have, and help change this world. And some of those biggest clients were my first investors, first 7-figure checks to say, let's go do it. And some of them used to be lawyers. Yeah. So I would say that I took from that my dad when he lost his job, and I asked him, I said, I said it in a kid way, how that works. But essentially he was my age right now, and he had to start over. And you go from a Fortune 500 company to being a jailer at a jail, making 10% And I don't know about you, but if we walked out of here right now with 10% of what we got, life would change very drastically.
Absolutely. We'd be driving Ubers on the side.
Driving Ubers, exactly. So I asked my father what would I have to do to not be in his situation when I'm his age, because I watched him basically mail the keys back to Johnson.
He told you to own the keys.
Yeah, he told me, you got to own the keys, son, if you don't want to be here.
Yeah.
And since then, I've been on a journey to figure out how to help other people own the keys to the houses where they will build their own memories.
Yeah, yeah. Well, listen, man, let's go back to redemption right fast. How does one go about acquiring a community bank, right? Because again, you're trying to target Utah. I've been to Salt Lake City, Utah a lot, right? I mean, the only thing I don't like about it is all the bars close at 1:30. You got to go home. But I mean, Utah is like, when somebody thinks like, wow, why Utah? Like, what is the process? How do you start in case someone else looks up in a black community and says, I don't like the way that bank is running. Let me get some investors and see if I can purchase so we can save it, right? How does one start to buy a bank?
Yeah, why Utah is a great question. First, it's just a pure business answer. I would tell you right now, it's just a numbers game, because business is business, and it's the #1 state to do business right now. U.S. News and World Report, last 3 or 4 years, it's the #1 place. When it comes to banking in particular, return on assets for banks in Utah is higher than everywhere else in America. And when you look at, just to be honest, being African American, going to a place that doesn't have a lot of African Americans, you got to think about that culture that you're around there, right? This is the first time that we've had a bank acquired in this way, because most of our banks are created out of the black community. This is the first time we're going outside the black community and buying a bank somewhere else. You got to make sure that it's a good cultural fit. And I think specifically there's like an untapped sort of magic in Salt Lake City, because you have a lot of people connected to the LDS Church, a lot. But the uniqueness about that is that you got a lot of people who, for 2 years, had to leave and do mission trips in places where they weren't the majority, had to learn the language and figure out how to serve. And so I think by coming there, I wasn't really surprised, but I was a little bit overwhelmed by the level of reception that we received. Dr. King, who's my business partner and co-founder in this, she has some existing deep relationships with some families there that goes back to her mother, Coretta Scott King. That was the entry point. So when Dr. King tells me if I had to live somewhere else outside of Atlanta, be Salt Lake City, my ears perked up.
Yeah,
and I'm like,
mine's would too. Salt Lake City,
right, so what
why?
are we doing? Right, so you start off with a regulatory environment that makes it conducive to return value to my investors.
Yeah.
And our road is one from acquiring this bank to being right here with you, being publicly traded. But then you stay and you can grow because of the people there who are willing to invest. Our cap table is a lot of African American business leaders from around this country, doctors, lawyers, guys here on Wall Street, impressive. But at the same time, it's also a lot of people locally in Salt Lake City who say, we want you here. From the Governor Spencer Cox, all the way to the president of Zion's Bank. Zion's is the big dog in town. They're the big bank. So if you're going to come into a market, the first question everybody's got is, what does Zion's think about it? And to have Zion's Bank, Scott Anderson, the president of that bank, say this is exactly what we need in Salt Lake City, I think it just bodes well for us to be able to take a small bank that is doing what it was meant to do, which is serve a small community of Holladay, but to also create a digital forward bank that can reach African American entrepreneurs, which is going to be our focus, really leaning into investing in those who are taking risk in our communities, from Detroit to Atlanta to Miami to Seattle. We no longer are 2 blocks off of Martin Luther King Jr. Drive or across the railroad tracks. The diaspora of black wealth is wide and varied, and it goes from coast to coast. We have to start building institutions that can actually help collect that wealth, but not do it by ourselves. There's allies who truly believe in the fact that economic justice is a key priority for them. And so we want Redemption to be an impact bank. This should be the bank that you understand, like all of our black banks do. They all do the mission work of loaning to people who might not get a loan other places, not because of de-risk, but because we still have discrimination in the financial system. There's still a trust barrier in the financial system. But an impact bank means while your dollars are sitting in our bank, we're doing the hard work and providing credit, because credit is like water. Where credit flows, opportunity grows. You show me a community with no opportunity, I'll show you one that doesn't have access to credit. That impact work is where every big foundation should be putting their money. If you are a philanthropic organization and you claim that you're doing impact work around this country, but you tell me that you're doing that, but your money's sitting in a bank that also might be causing a problem, then I ask you, you don't have to bank with me, but you should be banking your values.
Right.
Find a bank that's aligned to your values. And we think we can be a part of that chain reaction where people, just like the 60s, will start moving their money to align with their values. Shopping in the 60s, where we ate, where we didn't eat, where we went and didn't go, was a reflection of our values. This is the time for us to do it once again, to start aligning our values in the industry that has been unfortunately able to skirt by because people think they didn't have a choice. But we're going to create an option for people to say, if I want to impact bank, if I want to align my values, these are the generation of banks that are doing the hard work.
Couple more minutes, Ashely, I get you out of here, man, because you got a lot on your plate. You're CEO, you're running the Black Bank Foundation, you got Ready Life Entertainment, Ready Entertainment. We ain't even go into that yet. But, right fast, stand with Holladay Bank and Trust. In 2022, at the end of it was $68 million in total assets. What is it today in total assets?
Yeah, well, the call report's coming out. I want to get ahead of that, but I will say this. We've been able to secure from people who understand what I just told you, the impact that this could have. As we get ready to do everything we need to do this change of control, we've got commitments for over $100 million of deposits today, and that's growing. I think these are people who are saying, Ashely, I want to know that my money is sitting in a bank that's doing the work. And some people have researched the banks they're with, and they understand that those banks may not be aligned, and they want to move their money, especially people in the philanthropic world. They have to go out to their donors and say, look, we're doing the good work, but we also are making sure that the people we partner with are aligned with our values. At the end of the day, we have to get regulatory control, and we're going to make sure that we're doing everything we can to move as methodically as possible. Once this control is done, to grow as soundly as possible, because the last thing you want to have is a bank fail. Because at the end of the day, there's only 20 African-American owned banks today.
Yep.
And Dr. King.
23.
23. The rules a little.
Yeah, I know. Board control and all that.
Yeah. So let's just say 22 to be safe.
More than 20.
More than 20. If you say more than 20, when we used to have over 140.
Yeah, this number's still low.
The number is incredibly low when it was over 140 in the 60s, right? So what we have to do is be able to grow in a way that allows us to get income, not just from loans. And so this is what sports syndications deals will be able to do for us. We work with all the black banks to be able to do deals with the National Football League, this is the Black Bank Foundation, to be able to create an apparatus by which we can all pool our resources together and do big deals with big sports.
Yeah.
And because to me, and from covering sports in your day, these are industries that are making a lot of money off of black and brown bodies and talent.
Absolutely.
And if they're doing that, why not allow them an opportunity to put that money back into the communities that is producing those profits?
Yeah.
And so we think there's a unique opportunity to create fee-based income, not just interest income, that can help us grow a lot more soundly and a lot more stably.
Yeah. Well, while I have you, man, we're talking about banks and, so much more we can talk about. So I know I have to have you back. We even get into the predatory versus profitable and all of that stuff. But, listen, we are days and days, weeks, I should say, before the election. And, talking economic policy, on one end you have Vice President Harris. She wants to increase, child tax credits, $50,000 for entrepreneurs, a lot of stuff that it still needs to get through Congress and Senate. She does get elected. And on the other side, former President Trump, he wants the interest on car loans eliminated and double taxing and taking the taxes off of tips. And you look at his tariff proposals, which a whole bunch of institutions, one, Peterson says, hey, this is going to add $1,700 a year to my, median family taxes, and $15 trillion over 10 years. Again, two sides of the fence. It all depends. What isn't being talked about specifically with the black community? What economic policy? What should people be listening to in these last few weeks?
Yeah, I think that, first off, you hit the nail on the head. You're going to always have to make sure, no matter what the president says.
Congress and Senate.
There you go.
Yeah.
Congress and Senate has to be a part of the equation. And if something has never been done before, you got to ask yourself why.
Yeah.
Right? And so that's a big part of it. But I think we always have to ask conversations around what we just talked about. Nobody's talking about why we have the credit scoring system we have that is determining whether or not my family or your family gets access to credit, our friends in the neighborhoods that we come from get access to credit. I want to hear a conversation around what is a more fair and equitable system by which we lend money to people. Because right now you have 3 companies that are not run by the government, that have no ability for us to kind of put pressure on them, and they determine the whole show. When we know that there's data out there that can be better suited to determining and de-risking how we approach lending in this country. Until we address that in a way to have a real conversation, because there are people out here right now who can afford, well, let me just say it this way. It's still expensive to be poor in America.
Yeah.
As long as it's expensive to be poor, where people who make money don't get access to their money without paying high fines, that needs to be the number one issue. Until we can figure out a way to get people who are working hard access to the money that they have in a way that they don't have to be spending a lot to get what they already earned, that needs to be the number one issue to me. But you have to have that conversation at a multi-tiered level. And I also bring up the things we talked about with our land banks. If you live in a city right now and you have a land bank that is continuously increasing their inventory and bringing to properties in that are dilapidated, let's figure out how are you going to get that back on the property tax rolls. Because you know what, first thing, if those properties are on the property tax rolls, is increasing everybody else's property. But let's look at that as an opportunity to go to these cities, partner with us or somebody else and say, let's get a way to get people who can afford to own a home. Because that's what's affordable housing. People like to say affordable housing is a price tag. No, it's actually, can they afford it? Not just, is it 500,000 or 400,000? The number actually is, what are the people in that community making? What are they spending to keep a roof over their head? And if they're renting, how do they get access to owning? Because that one of the downsides that we've seen post-COVID and this real estate bust that we're having is that all the word residential housing is starting to become a farce. It's all commercial. People are taking homes that should be built for people, for residences, buying them up, putting them on Airbnb, putting them on all these other companies and making money off of them. They're commercial now.
Yeah.
And everyday people can't compete with that. And so the American dream will be lost until somebody makes a hard stand and says, look, this is the key to creating wealth in this country. We've always talked about being a capitalist country, and we should be, and we need to be. But at the end of the day, can we really make it capitalist for everybody? Can we allow for a system that can give everybody access to the market, everybody access to the same opportunities? And what that means at the end of the day is that you have a unique opportunity this election to reset the table. And people need to be bold and not just go after what politicians tell you they're going to do, but we have to educate ourselves from Congress to Senate. But don't forget about your local elected officials. I worry that you're not worried about your school board, because at the end of the day, part of that financial literacy that we're talking about at Ready Life, when someone has to take a financial literacy class before they can get into a home, is that the school board is actually your biggest property tax levier. So ask yourself, are you getting the return on your investment? If that's the biggest check you're going to write as a taxpayer to your school board, as a homeowner, do you enjoy your kid's school?
Yeah.
Do you feel like they're safe? The sheriff is getting the next biggest check, right? Mm-hmm. Am I being properly policed? There's so many things that are connected to our taxes that we look over because of the theatrics that happens at the top. The lower elections are where we will see a paradigm shift, if we want to see it, about a democracy that is responsive to the people and our investments, which are tax dollars. They're investments. We're sitting here at Nasdaq right now trying to figure out what's our return on our investments on the things that are going up and down. There should be a ticker for the sheriff's office. There should be a ticker for the school board. There should be a ticker for and all of it needs to. It just start going up and down.
Yeah,
that's what I'm saying.
Yeah, local elections,
absolutely.
they matter. They matter. I mean, bigger than national, and in some cases the president. They matter. But speaking of that, I get you out of here on this because listen, you were a former policy advisor for Donald Trump. Yep. You worked at the DNC. You worked at the RNC. You have a well-ranged understanding of how this thing goes, working on both sides of the aisle. Who wins?
Look. I have no idea who's going to win, but I'll say this. I've tried my best throughout my life to understand this language of politics. I hope I can extend what I learned from being on both sides of the aisle to translate that to businesses and enterprises and causes that can just cut through the sort of lingo that gets us divided and just get straight to the goal. If the left's got a good idea, it should be a good idea because it's a good idea.
Yeah.
Where can we have a marketplace of ideas? And that's what I hope we can get from this election. A solid marketplace of ideas so people can come vet what the ideas are, not be as concerned about who said it, but just evaluate it for what it is. Does it pencil out on paper? Does it actually make sense? Is it possible? And if it is, then let's debate that. So I hope that out of this election, the best ideas win. And who those are attached to, I couldn't tell you, my friend. I hope, at the end of the day, I just hope everybody gets out and vote.
Yeah, listen, I hope we have a Congress and Senate that can get along so we can get policies passed. That's what you hope for.
Yeah, you hope they can get along, but you also hope that there's some new blood.
Yeah, absolutely. You know? Yeah, well, listen, that's why, one of the questions I'm going to ask you about Mitt Romney in a minute, he's stepping aside because I admire his quote, when he said, listen, it's time for a new generation to shape the world they're going to live in. Right, and so definitely need this young people to step up, go out and vote. No matter who you vote for, just definitely do it. Rapid reaction stuff, man. As we get you out of here, first million. How'd you make it? How'd you spend it? Anything you do different?
How would I do it differently?
How'd you make it first?
Stocks.
Stocks. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
It was actually just personally investing.
Yeah.
I was. My friends on law school used to call me day trader. I was locked in. Mm-hmm. I probably should have been paying more attention. But I was literally on my first E-Trade account. I ain't gonna say what year, how old I am, but I was at the early, man. I figured it out, was able to take the money I made from stocks and then go into business. I started my first business while I was still in law school. Built a chain of retail stores and exited there.
Nice.
While I was in law school, which I don't advise anybody to do. Just stay focused on the books. But for me, I had the entrepreneur blood. I just had to get at it.
They don't sound like you do anything different, man. Like that sounds like a nice way to make $1 million.
You're right, exactly.
That doesn't sound like anything different. Well, Gen AI, artificial intelligence, when you hear the phrase, what do you think about and what isn't being talked about?
I think AI is, we're still very limited in what we think it can do or what we're talking about anyway. One of my advisors for Ready Life is Van Jones. Van Jones always talks about this. Van and I, chat about it. He talks about his daughter, her first crush is going to be an AI generated, guy when she's a teenager. I think the AI has some ability when it comes especially to mimic what we do. To be helpful in the criminal justice area that we are talking about. I think it can be more helpful in the mental health area. I think we talk about criminal justice as a whole. I think that when we are looking at how we approach justice and how we approach rehabilitation, I think once you see AI get into a space where it can help augment human behavior, be a support system for people that need support, I think you're going to start seeing AI being the therapists that we have in 20 years are going to be artificial. That can. I mean, if Alexa's listening to us all day anyway, and Siri is listening to us right now, think of all the data that's being collected that you could put human learning algorithms around to be able to step into that space. And those are some interesting products and companies on the market that are evolving right now. Keep an eye on that are private that I want to watch and see how they take that data and build out how AI can get into these spaces where we really need help, which is the systems that touch the least, the last, and the left behind, and really try to use it in a positive way. Yeah.
All the commitments that were made, the billions and billions of dollars of announcements since George Floyd was murdered. Now you see today DEI rollbacks. You see obviously a presidential election trying to divide families and all of that. When you look at what's going on today as far as the promises that were made to the black community, what do you see?
I wish I saw more.
Yeah.
I think that I made a commitment to myself, and a lot of other people in my circle made a commitment to ourselves to not complain about it, to just try to make the most of it. I think what you see with redemption, for a lot of us that have invested our time and talent into this effort to acquire this bank, it was primarily because we all knew after George Floyd that there would be a day
it was going to stop.
That it would stop.
Yeah.
That the cause for black lives in America will always be as popular as our last martyr.
Yeah.
And when that martyr loses popularity, our cause does. So we have to figure out how do we build institutions that can outlast that popularity.
Right.
And when we look at the fundamental institutions to a nation that is capitalist, banking is one of them. So we hope and we aspire to get this banking transaction done so that when we look back 50 years from now, and that question is asked again, that we can say that for a system that it has no grace and mercy for African Americans from its outset, in a world where we were told that capitalism was the name of the game, but we were people that were capital, and we're told to become capitalists. And along that journey, at some point, we found grace and mercy, because that is what redemption is. Redemption is grace and mercy. This is why we're building a bank in a way that we hope can be a symbol of extending grace and mercy to a people in a system that have never had it, but do so in a way that can be celebrated by all walks of life, a place where we can all come together, pull our talents, pull our resources and our wealth to have an impact on this world. And you can't do that unless you start with a recognition that whether it was right after George Floyd, it was right after Trayvon, it was right after the assassinations of the great martyrs of the past, every time we've seen this happen. But we have to start building blocks to build a foundation on it. We think banking is one of them. Our education, HBCUs are one of them. Our healthcare system is one of them. You gotta have those three things. If you're not healthy, if you can educate yourself and have a place to move your wealth, then you don't have a society, you don't have a community. This piece is critical, and we think that redemption can be a part of that.
Yeah, most definitely, man. Well, I'll get you out of here on this, right? Because banking is in your blood, right? And you're in it now. You know, kind of piggybacking off of, you know, Jim Collins' Good to Great book. What's the difference between a good bank and a great one?
I think, you know, a bank is, unfortunately, a lot of people tell me this, brothers tell me this all the time, well, actually, the bank's the bank. What are you doing different?
Yeah.
You know, I think first off, with any organization, the people matter. I think that there's good people at that bank now. I think there'll be good people that we'll bring in. But what I think could make a bank great is to not be afraid to do things a little differently with people you don't normally do them with. Just to be honest with you. What makes us great is the fact that we're a small bank. Will make us great is the fact that we're a small concern, but we aren't afraid to go knocking on the doors of National Football League, the NBA, and saying we can do a deal, same deal that Goldman can do. Mm-hmm. And that's what we showed with the Black Bank Syndication Desk. The NFL, Major League Soccer does a deal with JP Morgan all the time. They recapitalize themselves with JP Morgan. They did the same deal with 11 black banks. That's what I want to be able to show, not just about redemption, but about the collective power of all of the black banks. The fact that we did the exact same deal that Goldman Sachs could have done, that JP Morgan could have done, that's what makes a great bank, especially a minority bank, is when you can elevate ourselves out of just doing car loans, just small business loans. Yeah. But I can be sitting here with you. The end of the day, 5 years from now, we will talk again, whether it's outside on the street or you in a bigger space. But when we are looking behind me and you see redemption's ticker, and you see that number going up, and when somebody asks, how are the hopes and aspirations doing on Wall Street? And we're talking about Wall Street, we're not far from it. We need real estate on Wall Street. We need to own real estate on Wall Street. So a great bank in the black community, any other community, is somewhere that you can look and see the national impact of what you're doing. So good is local. Great would be national.
Yeah, and I hope the next time we talk, man, it's at the bank talking $1 million loan or something, man.
Come see me. Come see me.
Ashely Bell, I appreciate all the time, my brother. Good luck. I know there's a lot of hurdles that you still got to go through for the deal to be complete in Utah. Ready Life, right? You know, fintech is a great space, I believe. So good luck, man. I hope that this bank expands. I want to put my money there. I wanted to be there, man.
We love to have you. At the end of the day, if we...
I just don't want to move to Salt Lake. That's it.
Get your ski gear together, brother. Let's hit the slopes.
Absolutely. Ashely Bell here at the Nasdaq. Jabari Young, thank you for watching.